So imagine for a moment that an alien invasion of Earth occurred. It's quite probable that in that event, the nations of the world would forget that they were separate nations and would stop thinking of themselves as French or British or Chinese or American, and would instead think of themselves just as humans because they are threatened by an outside force, an exogenous threat. And it's really the same, not to compare the French to aliens, with the French domination of Europe on the German people. They stopped to think briefly of themselves as Westphalians, or as Hessians, or as Prussians or Austrians, and start to think of themselves as Germans because they are being threatened by this force outside of them, outside of their control. And it's so important to understand this because German nationalism is very much created by a force outside of Germany. It is not being created actually by forces within Germany itself. And that might be a surprise for us. So in 1812, Napoleon is ruling over all of Europe. He's at his peak of power, and of course he controls Germany within that. And we can see here from the map that there's territories that he directly controls in Germany, and there's territories which he indirectly controls. And these include the territories of Prussia and Austria. In today's session, we're going to think about the impact of the War of Liberation, the removal of Napoleon from Germany, and how that impacts the mind of the German people in pushing forward German nationalism. They finally have an enemy, a common enemy to unite against. That's going to be the main focus, but we're also going to think about the Congress of Vienna and the German Confederation, which replaces the Holy Roman Empire. And so we want them to be able to identify and evaluate how the defeat of Napoleon reshapes Germany and actually act as this moment where German nationalism comes to the fore. So the War of Liberation marks the rising of all those nations, those states that have been occupied by Napoleonic France, to re-establish their independence. And of course that principally concerns Germany, because Germany is very much at the heart of this control. And the end of Napoleon's reign over Europe occurs when he makes that classic fatal error, as many others have before and since, of invading Russia. And in 1812, he cancels their agreement and goes into Russia, and it's a disaster. Everywhere he advances to, the Russians flee, they burn everything, leaving him with nothing, and he's forced into this humiliating retreat, losing a huge chunk of his grand army. And once it became clear then that Napoleon was being defeated, that he was on the back foot, finally, someone had managed to challenge him. Prussia seizes the opportunity to join in attacking France and declares war in 1813. Austria also joins in on the action for about the millionth time against France, finally to challenge them again. And these three powers then, Russia, Austria, and Prussia, defeat Napoleon at the Battle of Leipzig, and that would lead to a chain of events which ultimately lead to his removal from power altogether. And it's here that we start to get some classic symbols of Germany and German greatness. For example, seen in the classic Iron Cross. The Iron Cross is awarded to all those people who have fought for Germany, or for German states, against Napoleon. And it's principally awarded by Prussia, and it becomes a Prussian symbol. The Iron Cross, connecting back to the Black Cross in the Teutonic era, the sort of old German power of the Teutons. And so it's meant to harken back almost to this old Germany, and maybe pointing forward to a new Germany that might be created. So we have the first symbols of a Germany coming out, of maybe a united Germany as well. And historians then consider the War of Liberation to be a key moment in the rise of German nationalism, the creation of a German identity. And historians say that this event really is the first collective action of the German nation, all the German people working together. And there's some evidence of that it's pushing towards the creation of a German nation state. There is the proclamation of Kalisz, which calls for a reconstituted German Empire. And the Prussian troops would actually hold this black, red, and gold flag, which becomes the symbol of a united Germany in this era, and of course, the current flag of Germany today. So this is a very important symbol for German people at the time. There's also the creation of the Freikorps, who again carry this special symbol of the gold, black, and red flag. And the Freikorps were made up of all people across Germany. These aren't just Prussians fighting against Napoleon, they're not just Austrians, they're not just Hessians, etc. These are Germans. And so this is really the point that we get the origin of the red, black, and gold flag, because there really is no obvious origin to it, where these colours come from, what they represent exactly, apart from this point, where they are used as this rallying symbol of the German people uniting together, fighting together as the Freikorps against France. Prussia's forces, obviously being German, are essential in defeating Napoleon at the Battle of Waterloo, when he tries to return to power a bit later as well in 1815. So Germans are at the forefront of the action against Napoleon. But even though there is this celebration of national unity after their repeated defeats of Napoleon, there is threats, and there are threats coming to the people. And that's coming really from Prussia and Austria. Both these states are against the German nationalism. They're happy to use it very briefly to defeat Napoleon, but as soon as Napoleon is defeated, they want to get rid of it. They want to eliminate it. And the reason is, if they allow this to get out of the bag, if they allow this sort of Pandora's box to be opened of German nationalism, they might lose their power to a new German state. And neither of them wants to concede that power. They're also worried that maybe the other one will be the one to unite Germany, to create a German state. The Prussians don't want a big Austrian-dominated German state, and the Austrians don't want a big Prussian-dominated German state. So these factors are making it very hard for this German nationalism, which has been let out during the War of Liberation, to continue. But even so, there are big signs of this German nationalism growing. They're growing in action through the German Freikorps. They're growing in symbols through the flag, through the Iron Cross, which is actually placed on the Brandenburg Gate because Napoleon stole the symbols of the Brandenburg Gate. And after the war, it's taken back, and the Iron Cross is placed on the top. It's a symbol of his defeat and this German victory. And there's also Beethoven, who composes this amazing piece of music called Germania, which celebrates Germany being liberated and thanks Austria, Prussia, and Russia for liberating Germany and the German people. So there's a lot of evidence that there is this growing cultural German nationalism, but these two states, Prussia and Austria, they don't want to see it released into the world. So what are the results of the Napoleonic Wars on Germany? Well, one thing is that the hatred and the resentment to France had unified the German people and states against this common enemy. Again, like if there was an alien invasion of Earth today, there would be a unification of the people of the world against it. And this happens with Germany against the French. The removal of the Holy Roman Empire has been very useful because it creates the possibility of a new political order. Maybe there's going to be a new German nation state. The proclamation of Kalisz was hopeful in that regard. The states had used, of course, German nationalist feelings to help defeat Napoleon. So Austria and Prussia have let it a little bit out of the bag, this force of German nationalism, for using those feelings to defeat Napoleon. And victory in the War of Liberation was a united achievement for the German people. And we could say that it was the most significant action of the German people since Luther and the Protestant Reformation. So this is a huge moment for the German people. And we might think about Hegel, going back to last session. Hegel, of course, he said that Luther and the Protestant Reformation showed that the German people were now walking with the spirit of the times, that they were embodying the world spirit. And this adds to that belief, doesn't it? The German people are now walking with this kind of destiny. They're involved in this hugely important moment with the defeat of Napoleon and a new order for Europe. But as we've said, the victorious nations have very different outlines, very different plans from what maybe some of the people are thinking. The people of Germany, certainly. First of all, they want to make sure that there is no more revolution, no more change in the world, because the French Revolution has caused too much change, it's caused too much chaos in the world, and they want to go back to this sort of stable, ordered system of the king ruling and of the church ruling over society. They want to restore the Ancien regime, so Prussia, Austria, Russia, and of course Britain and other powers as well, want the restoration of this old system because the French Revolution has caused too much chaos. And so they sit down after Napoleon is defeated to decide what to do. We're mainly thinking about Britain, Russia, Prussia, and Austria. They decide we have to change Europe now. This is our moment to change things. And they do that in the Congress of Vienna, where this discussion takes place about the future of Europe. And I can tell you that the German nationalists are not on their radar at all. They are not thinking about German nationalism one bit. In fact, they see that very much as a threat. As they go about reordering Europe, there's some key ideas that they have in their mind, and we want to think of those ideas as well in these terms, which do include people as well. The first idea is the idea of the Holy Alliance. The Holy Alliance is an agreement between Austria, Russia, and Prussia to assist each other if a revolution occurred in their countries. So if there's a big uprising in Prussia, maybe of liberals, of nationalists, then that would mean that Austria and Russia get involved, send their armies there to crush this uprising and restore the rulers, the kings of Prussia, to power. The same thing in Russia. If there's an uprising against the Tsar there, Austria and Prussia send their troops and they restore order there as well. So it's kind of a Warsaw Pact type thing. If we think about the Cold War, whenever one of the Eastern Bloc nations, say Romania or say Poland, wanted to become non-communist, wanted to have a liberal democracy, they would be invaded by all the countries around them and communism would be put back in place. This is exactly the same, but of course, rather than communism being put back in place, it's the old order, the rule of the kings of the church. And obviously they choose that name, the Holy Alliance, to indicate their loyalty to sort of the religious authorities and the kingly authorities. They're also defined very much by conservatism, and the next 40 years will be an era of conservatism. What would a conservative support? What would a conservative oppose? Think about that for a moment. What's in the minds of a conservative? Think about the word. But we'd say that conservatives principally are about supporting order, keeping things stable. They believe in hierarchy, and they're against ideas like change, radical change, revolution, and equality. Not necessarily because they hate equality, they don't want people to be equal, but because they don't think it works and they don't think it's possible. Some people are better than others. And so what will this mean then, if conservative people are deciding the foreign policy, the future foreign policy of Europe? Well, it will mean that they're going to want, quote, stability. Stability is what it's all about. And they want stability within the states of Europe and stability between the states of Europe. And that is their quote going forward. That is their motto, the different powers of Europe after Napoleon. Stability within states, so we don't want any revolutions to be occurring within the states, and we want stability between states. We do not want the states going to war with each other. And their belief is that if we stop a revolution happening in one country, then it will stop war happening between other countries, because that's what caused the big Napoleonic conflict, because a revolution happened in France and it didn't stay in France. It spread out and it caused loads of wars and it caused loads of conflicts. And we have to stop that from happening again. So there is a duty then, like the Holy Alliance, to prevent anything from happening, from anything from going forward